What is one secret you wish you could tell your spouse, but instead you'll take to your grave? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. On our first date, the pie crust was store-bought, and the key lime filling was made with a mix. Nothing was from scratch. I literally had to learn how to make pies to cover this mistake. Story 2. His mother once drunkenly told me she didn't think he was good enough for me. She and his whole family have chronically underappreciated him and treated him poorly. He's a quiet but steadfast and loyal person that I'm eternally grateful for, and I wish he could set better boundaries with these people who seem to have never taken the time to see him. But I don't want to hurt him. Answer. Maëlle once told me she was disappointed at her son's mediocre career, even though he is a successful technical leader and well-respected in industry. Apparently, they expected him to be a high-flying CEO type and were disappointed that his career ended up being so average. Maëlle has not worked a day in her life, and family treats son like unlimited bank. That day I confirmed that his whole family is trash. Breaks my heart they don't deserve him. If you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Link is in the description. I'll show the most interesting messages in my videos. Story 3. That time, a few years back, when cycling to work on an icy wooden boardwalk, and I had to brake suddenly, and the bike skidded out from under me, cost a couple $100 damage to the bike, and broke my elbow, requiring time off work and a screw in my humerus. Well, that was not an emergency braking due to a car crossing the path in front of me. It was a result of the thought, hey, this looks slippery. I wonder what will happen if I lock the rear brake. Exclamation. Answer. When I was a teenager, I smoked a lot of plant substance. I was incredibly stoned one night riding my bike home. It was a really quiet night, just me pedaling along the road. I was hypnotized by the sound of the wheels and pedals and was looking down at the front tire spinning round. I had the thought to gently touch the tire with my foot to feel what it was like, so I did. Fudge me. Faster than I could process what happened, my foot got dragged into the front fork, causing me to flip over the handlebars and crash to the floor. It was such a fast and violent end to my stoned days, LOL. I just sat there dumbfounded for a bit before sheepishly looking round to see if anyone saw. Story 4. My fiancé is sober now, but a while back he went out with some friends and got sloppy, blackout tipsy. Not common for him, but BOGO shots night. He was dropped off and I had to basically carry him to the bathroom and help him pee. Then he got in the shower, and when I was washing him, a turd fell right out of his butt. I just never told him and said he got dropped off and I put him to bed. Lamau. Story 5. Our 13-year-old beloved German Shepherd suffered greatly on the day she left us, when he was at work, before I could get her to the vet. I will never tell him this. Some things are better left unsaid. Answer. My in-laws FaceTimed my then BF while they were at the vet with his childhood dog to have it put to sleep, and it was vomiting dark blood while receiving the injection, due to severe health issues. They really didn't need to show him that. I was pissed for him. He was in a different country, so couldn't be there to say goodbye, but they should have done the FaceTime before the final vet appointment. His parents are emotionally immature and just called him so he could comfort them while they were crying uncontrollably. But that was very selfish of them. Story 6. His mother's macaroni salad is disgusting, and I can only get a few mouthfuls down to be polite if I dump enough pepper on it to eliminate it. Answer. Ugh, my ex's mom wasn't a bad cook by any means, but man, did she just love overcooked roasts and a rotating selection of frozen potato side dishes. I think I spent a year being told how delicious these frozen duck fat potatoes were, while I choked down their weird, rancid taste and microwave texture. Then it was a year of frozen au gratins that were only slightly better. Then she took it up a notch with fresh boiled plain potatoes, roasted in the oven until they were dried out. No seasoning or anything. I'd always contribute something homemade for dinner or dessert, and we used to have them over for dinner at our place too. But I was so fudge glad when her sister moved into town and started hosting dinners because she actually made good stuff. Story 7. Not that big of a deal, but we live in a small town, and if I see my in-law's car parked somewhere, I avoid going there. Story 8. That I didn't let her win at mini golf on our first date. I'm legitimately just that bad at mini golf. Story 9. I bought a backpack from Walmart for a work trip and found panties in it. I wanted to tell her because it was a massive WTF, but stopped when I realized that almost no one would believe that I just happened to find panties in a backpack on a work trip. Answer: my boss found a pair of little girl's panties in the back seat of my work truck, and I don't have children. It raised a tense line of questioning. Turns out one of my co-workers with kids had just done laundry that night, and it either stuck to their clothes when they left the house or fell out of the sweatshirt they were wearing while riding with me. Story 10. We're pretty tight on funds at the moment. He always says no when I ask him if he'd like me to pick up a carton of his favorite drink on the way home from work. He claims it's not a necessity, and he's fine without it. So I grab a couple anyway, put them up the back of the fridge, and act all surprised when he finds them and says, "Oh look, I didn't see these earlier. See, I told you I didn't need you to get me any." Story 11. That I knew about the surprise birthday party he threw for me because a coworker left their email up at work and I saw the invitation in their email. He would find this story funny, knowing which coworker it was, but he went through so much trouble to keep this a surprise that I want him to have that win. Story 12. I really didn't enjoy our wedding. I love my wife, but our actual wedding just seemed anticlimactic and stressful, not to mention expensive. And in hindsight, just doesn't seem like it was worth the trouble. But I've never admitted it so as to not temper her memories of a day I hope she loved. Answer: kind of the opposite problem. Other side of the coin. Every time I see a wedding someone else gets to have with all their friends and family, I get upset. We got married with only a dozen attendees, including us, the musicians, and priest. It was what my husband wanted. He doesn't like a fuss. I should never have caved and agreed to it. I never got my dream wedding, and worst part was, not even all my siblings could attend. It was during COVID-19, and the attendee numbers were capped below the number of immediate family we have. I only got to have my parents and sisters there. All I wanted was a fun day of celebration with the people I love, and instead the memory has such a tinge of sadness. Story 13. I lied when I told her on our first date that I had watched Once Upon a Time. She was amazing, and I wanted to have some immediate connection to her, so I said I had seen it, but less than her. I then proceeded to binge an entire show in less than a month. Mind you, a show that would normally never cross my radar, so I could talk about it with her. We are getting married in a few months, and I'm debating confessing it in my speech during reception. Edit to add. My fiancé and I have extremely good senses of humor and know what is a line cross and what isn't. Me lying about something minor extremely early in our relationship and finding out now wouldn't make her mad. Finding out I watched the show after her and still dislike season 4 may even make our love stronger. Answer: the first movie we ever watched as a couple was Phantom of the Opera with Gerard Butler. He said he had never seen it while we were discussing the stage play. I insisted he come back to my house and watch it. 4 years later, he confessed he had seen it a few times, since his mom was a huge fan. But to be fair, he didn't realize until I put the movie on. I just found it very funny. Lol. Story 14. I'm scared to die and leave my wife and son alone. We started late. I'm 48 with a 4.5-year-old adopted son. I've lived an unhealthy life, been very overweight. I've lost 145 pounds in the past 2 years to get healthy and still have 100 to go. It's because I'm terrified of dying and leaving them alone. It's not necessarily a secret, but I can't say it to her and add to her anxiety. Answer: fudge, yeah. I don't know you, but you're awesome. It takes a real father to step up and do the hard things that are in the best interest of their kid and family. I started late too, and my demon was drinking and partying before I adopted my son. Stopped all of it stone cold to be a good example and live a long life for him. He just turned 17, and I couldn't love that kid more. I'm pulling for you, man. Knock out the rest of that weight like it owes you money. Story 15. I can't stand the way his parents and sister treat him. They're always talking down to him like he's less. Then when we have a small disagreement over something really stupid, here comes his "I'm always the punching bag" speech. On the other hand, I love watching his face glow and light up when he accomplishes something. Recently, the serpentine belt on his car fell off. I walked 2.5 miles with him back to his car just to pull the belt down over one of the pulleys. I didn't do any of the hard work. He did. He has never done anything like that for himself. When I told him, "Look what you did, be proud," he looked like he was going to cry. Makes me furious nobody has ever complimented him like that. Story 16. I told him watching him clean the shower turns me on. He cleans that baby with such enthusiasm for the past 25 years. It does nothing for me, but I reward him for his efforts. Story 17. The novel that she wrote and is trying to get published is extremely mediocre. She wrote it in Spanish and translated it into English. It is fine. Not terrible, but not great either. Maybe it's better in Spanish. My Spanish isn't good enough to really judge that, though. I keep encouraging her to write because she has a lot of interesting things to say. She can only get better. Plus, it makes her happy. I just don't see this novel getting published in English in the US. Answer. As a writer, one thing that people don't realize is your first book is almost never the one that gets published first. In fact, it's usually not until about their third or fourth manuscript that people usually get an agent. She should keep writing. Once you finish one manuscript, you start the next one. You can keep trying to get the first one published if you like, but don't stop actually writing. Story 18. Whenever my spouse and I can't decide something trivial, like what restaurant to eat at, we'll consult a magic 8-ball. If it's a positive response, we go with option A. If it's a negative response, we go with option B. And if it's a neutral response, we roll again. Here's the thing she doesn't know. In a standard magic 8-ball, there are 10 positive responses, 5 negative, and 5 neutral. So whenever I really want my restaurant or whatever to win, I make sure it's the positive option so that the odds are in my favor. Answer. Years ago, I worked on an energy infrastructure project that seemed to be going nowhere. As a joke, one of the team bought a magic 8-ball, and we started to use it to sense check our decisions. We became that dependent on it that it overrode every decision that looked poor. Both surprisingly and amazingly, the project became a success, but we all swore a code of silence never to talk about it with others, and it was retired and placed on an innocuous windowsill keeping watch over us. Even to this day, I wonder whether it had special powers or was just a fluke, but I got a nice bonus out of it, so it's all good. Story 19. If you ask my spouse who said I love you first, my spouse will proudly say that I did, except I did not say I love you first. My spouse very much misheard me during a moment of passion and responded, I love you too. We were 18, 19 years old at the time, college sweethearts. So I felt awkward correcting them and just went with it from that day on. It worked out, obviously, actually falling in love, so no harm done. Story 20. That I can't stand her fudge family. Seriously, not one single mother fudge that she's blood related to. They're all a bunch of blood-sucking parasites who offer nothing to anyone and only contact us when they have a crisis and need something from us. But I'm pretty sure she knows. Answer. Same here. I was married to my wonderful wife for 22 years, and to this day, I cannot understand how she was ever related to the rest of her family. They are incredibly diverse in their stupidity. Many have issues with common sense, and some are just plain dumb. But not my wife. She was a diamond in the rough, in a league of her own. It's one of life's incredible mysteries that I will forever go to my grave wondering about. Story 21. You're turning into your father. Everything you dislike about him are things you're starting to do too. Answer. You gotta tell them. My dad started acting a lot like his mom as he's gotten older. His mom is a self-centered windbag full of negativity, and the whole family knows this. My mom started pointing out, kindly but honestly, every time he said something or did something that was like her. My dad disliked it, yes, but he also recognized that my mom was right and works to fight being like her now. He sometimes still has his moments, but telling him actually helped him see it too and work on his behavior. Story 22. The first time I went to their house, I massaged their head until they fell asleep on the couch. They farted so loud that their own cat bolted out the room. Answer. When I was first dating my wife, the first time she stayed over at my house, we were in bed and spooning, and she fell asleep. She then farted on my junk. I was both grossed out and then also found it hilarious at the same time. I just chalked it up to, it happens, and blew it off. I never have told her that she did that and never will. She would be so embarrassed. Story 23. It is very obvious and very irritating that he has never had to go without anything significant and now can't handle waiting, being hungry, being hot or cold, etc., without getting annoyed and grumpy. Answer. My husband is like this, and I kind of think we both need to go to therapy about it. He needs to be able to handle minor inconveniences without it ruining his day. And I need to be able to exist in a space with him being pissy without it making me go into fight or flight mode. My family is exceptionally good at not sweating the small stuff. All the in-laws who have married into the family have been like, yeah, you guys are abnormally chill. So growing up, if someone was externalizing anger, frustration with more than just, darn, that sucks, it meant things were really bad. Meanwhile, he's over here raging because he hit 3 stoplights in a row. Never directed at me, for the record. Story 24. That I wish he could see himself through my eyes. He has bad depression, and thinks he's worthless, but every day at work, knowing I go home to him makes every moment worth it. He's so smart and creative and handsome, and I feel so honored to spend my days with him. I try to tell him, but he doesn't listen. Answer: he listens, but his brain is lying to him right now. It's messed with his brain chemistry so much that he physically feels terrible as well as mentally terrible. And his thoughts are telling him he's the worst person in the world. So being in the deep hole of depression makes it almost impossible to believe that you can be a decent human, because your brain is telling you all the time you aren't. Keep telling him. Keep encouraging him to get help. Story 25. When he was gone for a week, I changed the thermostat from 68 degrees F to 65 degrees F because it was just too warm to sleep the way I wanted to, bundled in my blankets. Story 26. She threw a surprise party for my B-Day back in 2019. Seen it coming from a mile away, but never let on that I knew. Story 27. I was passing notes between a classmate, now wife, in high school, and I told her I liked this girl in class. It was a different girl that I actually had a crush on, and she proceeded to ask if I was talking about herself. So I packed, and not to hurt her feelings, I said yes. She then proceeded to tell me she liked me as well. Long story short, we have 5 kids and been together for 16 years and married for 13 years. I will take that secret to my grave. Answer: I once accidentally sent somebody a message talking about them. That was meant for my best friend. The message was a rambling thought train about how this guy was really cool and hot, but it had never become anything, because I doubted he was that into me. And I expected the most it would ever be was a great ONS if I was lucky, and we'd both move on. I ended up dating that person for 2 years, and it started from that message. That's a long time when you're young, and we were very happy together for most of it. Story 28. One time when we were having a fight and hanging out with people in separate states, I watched the first 6 episodes of a new season of a TV show we really liked without her. I then watched all of those episodes again with her, as though I'd never seen them before. Telling her would help no one. Answer: when I was in high school, my mom and I were having a fight. She had the audacity to watch the newest episode of Gilmore Girls without me. When I tell you that I cried so hard, like my best friend died, she had no idea it would hurt me so much. She's kind of turning into a meanie in her older age. So many she actually did know it would hurt me so much then, and just pretended she didn't. Story 29. That I miss when he was still afraid to fly, but only because I miss taking Amtrak. I'm so glad he's no longer a shaking, sweaty mess when we fly. So happy he's not racked with anxiety anymore. But dude, the train was so fun. Story 30. The reason I had to run home before I made it to work was because I pooped my pants. I will take it to my grave. 7 years so far. Story 31. How much I miss him. How much the kids miss him. How hard it's been since he died. How much I love him. How much I wish I could see him again. I would ramble on for so long. I'd have so much to say. I will never get the chance though. I will take it all to my grave. Edited to add, I want the chance to tell him again, with the added perspective of having experienced the loss of him. To tell him everything else that has happened. I told him when he was alive, often. We told each other, and it's what has bolstered me through this awful, demoralizing time without him. Without us. Answer: God, I feel this so bad. It is my story too. It's crippling pain sometimes. It's thinking about those times you spooned, or stood in the kitchen hugging, or just laughing in the car about some dumb conversation. I wish I could have even 5 more minutes with him again. Friend, you are not alone. There are people like me out there who desperately miss their person. It's not fair, and it's nothing you can get over like your friends and relatives say, because they'll never understand. No one will, except people in the same situation as us. The depth of this despair is indescribable. Story 32. My spouse thinks I'm terrible at baking. I'm the primary cook. I'm really good at baking, but they love doing it. So I've screwed things up enough times that they take over without guilt. It was amazing when my oldest kid figured it out. It was like she suddenly got in on the conspiracy of a lifetime. Story 33. That 90 minutes before we made plans to hang out the next day, I had just gotten dumped after 2.5 years. Story 34. That even though I pretend not to like him being clingy and goofy, I absolutely love and adore it. But the more I seem to not like it, the more he does it to annoy me while turning into a teenager-like. But I secretly pretend so he can do it more. LOL. Also, I like the sound of his snores. It became my calming sound during sleep, LOL. Story 35. Sometimes when he throws his tantrum, gives me the silent treatment, and leaves. I wish he would stay gone. Go find an apartment, grab his chute, and go. The peace that fills my home when he is gone is so nice. Answer: this was how I felt in my marriage, but one has to work on a relationship, and it's not easy. You have to make it work. She moved out, and I felt so relieved, but then she asked to try again, and I did. It was a mistake. Now we're divorced, and I have found someone new, and somehow the relationship doesn't feel like work. I don't feel relief when we're apart, and I don't feel an oppressive feeling when coming home. Do yourself a favor and separate. You're wasting time that you could be happy. Story 36. Sometimes I stare at his face while he's sleeping. The shadows make it look like he's smiling, and it's super cute. And I stare for a while. LOL. It's been 12 years and I haven't stopped. Might have a problem. He'll never know. Story 37. That I almost ruined our cruise. No passport. Needed a birth certificate. Couldn't find it. Had to order it, but it didn't come before we left out of state to go on cruise. Day or so before we boarded, I got word BC was ready, and I paid go have it overnighted to our hotel. It came. We went on cruise. He never knew. Harmless now, but kinda embarrassing. Answer: that's like my wife realizing her license, enhanced license, allows you into Canada from the US, was expired by like 6 fudge months a few days before we went on a trip to Canada. She felt so bad and I didn't want to kick her while she was down. But 6 goddamn months? And this isn't the type of license where you walk into the DMV and walk out with a new license. They have to mail it to you at the speed of any government entity. We were literally leaving for our trip, hoping to God that the border agents were feeling kind and would allow her into Canada, back into the US with her expired license and her temporary license, knowing full well that they probably wouldn't when we passed the mail truck. I said, fudge it. Let's turn around and check the mail just in case. And sure enough, the license was in there, only 3 days after she had gone to the DMV. Story 38. I never told my partner the essays I experienced. I've told him there were multiple, but very little detail. I feel like it would hurt him, and I don't really want to explain it to him for some reason. Answer: my husband knows the main details of my worst one because I have PTSD from it, but I also struggled with this when I was stalked SAD at work. This was over 5 years ago, obviously during our marriage. We've never discussed it fully. I totally understand the feeling of not wanting to explain it, and I'm sorry you've been there too and deal with this as well. Story 39. Well, this one I want to tell her, but I told her she probably doesn't want to know the details, and she decided she didn't want to know. Not anything scandalous, but we had a pest problem in the attic. I thought it was rats, so I put some traps out. I'll put the rest in spoiler tags because it's going to get graphic, but it's what she decided not to hear. So I hear the trap go off right as I'm getting ready to go to bed, and hear a little bit of squealing after. I go to check on it. Trap is empty, peanut butter is gone, but I see blood and what appears to be skin and whiskers. A second later, this little mouse comes out, and yeah, it's missing the front of its face. I'm already reeling a bit seeing this, feeling terrible that it got disfigured and is dealing with that pain. The point of snap traps is to be more humane and eliminate them quickly. I'm sitting there, this mouse staring at me, and me back at him. I'm just like, fudge, what do I do now? Poor thing won't survive and will be in a lot of pain. I gotta try to put it down quickly. Well, I had a hammer with me, so after sitting there for a couple minutes, convincing myself it was the right thing to do, and I had to do it, I hit it with the hammer and eliminate it. This is my first time directly eliminate something bigger than a bug spider, so it didn't come easy. I have set traps for mice before and got some, but doing it with your hands is different. I wanted to talk it over with her to help me deal with the distress I was feeling, but I knew she would not enjoy hearing it. I told her I didn't think she wanted to hear the detail, but if she decided she wanted to hear it, I would tell her. She said, "Is it very bad?" And I mulled it over for maybe 10 seconds and said, "Yeah," so she declined. I've only talked it over with my dad since. Kinda just needed to vent it a bit more, hence typing it all out. Answer: I understand what you mean, and I'm so sorry you had to see and deal with all of that. Some mice came into my space and my cats would generally take care of them during the night, and I'd find them dead in the morning. Well, one time it happened during the day, and my toddler noticed and became interested. I went over to get him away from all of that. My cat then lost interest. So there was this tiny mouse, slowly dying, suffering. I felt really bad, so I finished what my cat started as quickly as I could. I sobbed afterward. Story 40. That her sister made a pass at me while my wife was at work. And even though I turned her down, she threatened to tell my wife that I'd taken her up on the offer. Story 41. I fart like, near constantly. While we're cuddling on the couch or in bed, it's one of the main reasons I like being Big Spoon Jetpack. I'm afraid he'll feel the warmth of my silent secret farts. Story 42. My boyfriend and I met online, and when he first showed me a picture of him, I thought he looked goofy in it because of the face he was making. But I didn't want to be rude, so I lied and said he looked cute. He looks hot as hell in person, and in every other picture and video of him he has sent me. It's just that one picture of him I find funny. I know how mean that sounds though, and I don't want to hurt him, so I never actually told him or anyone else about it. Story 43. I knew certain people were going to die on the 100 and acted shocked when it actually happened when we watched it together. Story 44. That sometimes I still wish he'd have taken me seriously before I emotionally checked out and told him I wanted a divorce. I miss him and his family every now and then. Story 45. I apologize if this upsets anyone. Okay, this is the only secret I have from my wife, and sometimes I wonder if I should just tell her. My wife and I are both vegetarians and animal lovers. We had a pigeon in our garden one day that was flapping about on the ground. I went out to investigate, and it looked like it was having trouble moving one of its wings. I didn't get right up to it or pick it up because I didn't want to upset the poor thing. I came back in and told my wife it was injured, and we decided to leave it be and let it rest and try and recover. My wife went to work, and I kept an eye on the pigeon as the day went on. At one point, I realized that it hadn't moved for quite a while, so I went up to investigate again. That's when I realized that the poor thing had more than a minor injury. Its wing had almost been ripped completely off, and it had a deep laceration into its body as well. At this point, I had picked it up and I was holding it. It was lifeless, and for want of a better term, split open. I thought it was dead and gone. Then I noticed it was somehow still alive. Its eye blinked at me, and I could see slight breathing. I knew it was beyond hope, and I knew it was suffering beyond imagination. I couldn't bear the thought of this poor guy suffering anymore and the time it would take to get him to a vet to have him euthanized. So I eliminate the poor guy as quickly as I could in what I hope was an act of mercy. When my wife came home from work, her first question was, "How was the pigeon?" I told her that it had rested for a few hours and then flown away. Story 46. When my husband and I first started dating, I knew he was dating other women as well. He was honest with me and said he had just got divorced a little over a year before and wasn't looking for anything serious yet. However, we really clicked, and I just knew he was the one. Every second he was out with someone else was pure agony for me, but I tried not to let it show. Finally, after months of that, I wanted to give him a taste of how I was feeling, so I just made up a fictional guy, an old friend, I was beginning to spend time with. My husband would ask me out, and I would occasionally tell him I'd already made plans with the other guy. Anyway, after a few weeks of that, he said he was no longer comfortable with us dating other people. We became exclusive and have now been happily married for 22 years. But I've always felt so ashamed of my dishonesty. Story 47. Oh boy, this is a big one. My fiancé and I were at the hospital while his sister was giving birth. Afterwards, he and Daddy were out getting drinks, and I was napping in the chair in the room. I had just woken up when I heard her tell her mother tearfully that she had cheated on her boyfriend and didn't think the baby was actually his. And what should she do? My fiancé's mother said, "Take it to the grave, honey. Don't say a thing." She didn't. She told him before he signed the birth certificate, and they had a DNA test done. It wasn't his. She was very open about this with everyone, but she never once spoke about the advice her mother had given her, so I never brought it up either. I was just quietly really proud of her. Story 48. That after my mother told me she never wanted me, and that the whole reason I was still here was because of Dad, I felt alone, sad, and scared, and despite everything she does for me, hasn't helped. After my dad died right after my birthday, it's gotten so much worse. She does her best, but it doesn't help that her family doesn't like me either. I wanted to just give up, but I'm in therapy now. It hasn't really helped much, but I'll keep on keeping on for her. Story 49. My now dead Mill, who could do no wrong in my husband's eyes, used to tipsy call my parents wailing that I had trapped him in a joyless, loveless marriage, and why don't I let him go? My parents never told me about this until I heard it for myself. My dad was in the final stages of lung cancer, dying at home. She rang at midnight and I overheard the call. I despised her after that, and when she died I could have spit on her grave, but I've never told my husband. TBH, I don't think he would believe me. Story 50. If I had the money to leave, I'd be gone in a very kind way and we'd be friends. I know he'd be so confused, but I've never felt so lonely right next to someone. Story 51. He thinks I prefer the flat wings and has said it's so convenient because he likes the drumstick ones. I prefer the drumstick ones, but I'm not going to ruin it for him. Story 52. I would go to the furthest place on earth just to never see his family again. I've never seen toxic people like them before in my lifetime. Story 53. I had a sweet, wonderful student who had been in foster care, but his mom worked her jerk off to get him back, and she did. He had to take a very important city exam. I have no idea why I wrote city exam, and she called me and asked if he passed it. I looked at the grades and saw he did and said so. She burst into tears of joy, and that is when I saw I had read the wrong score. He had failed, so I changed his grade to passing. No one knew. That was the only time I ever did that. That could have cost me my license. The weird thing is, when my awful, corrupt principal pressured me to change other students' scores so we could raise our pass rate, I refused. I never told anyone what I did for my student. He went into the military, was extremely successful there, has a great wife and kids, so I think I did the right thing. Fudge those tests. They aren't human. Story 54. That I never wanted to move. We moved to be closer to her side of the family, and I convinced her I was very much okay with it, so she could spend the remaining years her parents have much closer to her and their grandkids. All the while I'm 100%. My parents died years ago, and I had no family left. Where I came from, we were living. She had been asking for years if I would consider moving, and I said no. And then my parents died, and I told her I was okay to move away from my home state and my friends, and I haven't been okay since. And I will take this to my grave, because my love for her is more than an address. Story 55. 10 years ago, I was pregnant with our first child and incredibly stressed. I had horrible brain fog. I was experiencing sleep paralysis frequently and just barely felt human. Well, one day, it was like I woke up from the fog, and I just happened to be standing in front of the toilet with an empty jar of giant pickles that I had obviously flushed down the toilet. 1 week later, our pipe to the sewer system broke. My husband was like, darn, knew it was going to go sooner or later. It's probably 80 years old. But I know that I'd been flushing the most insane things down the toilet, probably for weeks. Also, the sleep paralysis caused me to see a weird black figure standing in our doorway almost every night at one point, until I had the baby 3 weeks early in the middle of the bathroom reno. Story 56. The kids and I dislike my husband's bolognese sauce. It's watery and tasteless. I add more ingredients when he's not looking. The kids help distract him. I've also stopped buying canned tomatoes so he can no longer add them. Story 57. She often has bad breath. I think it's a medical condition because she brushes her teeth as often and well as I do. I sometimes try to be smooth and offer her a gum, but one time she got offended just from being offered gum. So now I just live like this. I don't mind. I love her regardless. Answer. Took into tonsil stone. It's not related to brushing your teeth, but the geometry of your tonsils. I have that. Basically crypts where tonsil stone can accumulate. If not taken care, it feels like you have something stuck in your throat. It smells like passing, just foul. You can flush them with water. I used a syrup syringe and push water into the crypt. Now I use one of those water pick to the lowest settings. I also use the light of my phone to look if I have some to clean. You'll see white spots on the tonsils in the mirror. Story 58. It wasn't me that farted. It was the dog. He looked so embarrassed, and I couldn't leave my boy hanging like that. Story 59. She is a hoarder, so when she is out of the house, I start throwing things. But because we have so much crap, she doesn't even notice. Story 60. My real name is Raymond. I was put in witness protection. I'm actually a gay man and I don't love weighty breasts. Story 61. I may tell her eventually, but I fake some emotions. I know intellectually how I should behave and react in certain situations, but my baseline emotional level is pretty dead. I know that would freak out a lot of people, so I sort of put on a show. Also, and this is hardly a secret, but I am nightmarishly terrible about self-care. My household growing up was really stressful and tightly wound, so big displays of emotion were very much frowned upon. And after a while, I just sorta put those emotions away and forgot where they went. I went NC with my emotionally abusive parent. The other one is rad AF. Earlier this year, and I've been meaning to go to therapy to deal with some big feels, but things just got financially tight. Story 62. It wasn't about the alcoholism. It still isn't about the alcoholism. It's the years of lying, gaslighting, and manipulating that was the final straw. I would have stayed forever had he tried in even the slightest bit to get those behaviors under control. Story 63. My wife looks like my favorite adult performer from when I was in my early 20s. I love her foremost for who she is, her personality, her sense of humor, her street smarts, and how hardworking she is. I don't want her to think I married her just because she happens to look like my favorite adult performer, because I didn't. As a complete package, she's the best woman I've ever dated by far, and I knew I had to wife her. Story 64. That I know he's been unfaithful and that I am planning to leave one day. I'm just so tired of it all. Story 65. Sometimes she farts in her sleep. It's woken her up a couple times. She gets scared she heard someone breaking in, so I just play along and go look, LOL. Story 66. How often I say I don't know where something is in our home. I know where it is, I know exactly where it is, and I know it is right in front of his face when he asks me, where's the clothes? If this MFer, whom I adore by the way, can play a video game and spot some bullshit a mile away before it happens, then he can find this static thing. It is not because there's an uneven mental load at home. It's because he has ADHD and impulsively asks before rummaging a bit. I use this as an opportunity to curtail my own habit of helping so often. Story 67. Every time I hear someone talk over him, I get unreasonably upset about it, so I make sure to listen to him with open ears and my best attempt at full concentration, although I have ADHD and can also interrupt when I get excited. Story 68. That I wasn't attracted to him when we met up for the first time on our first date. I felt a little disappointed, but the feeling didn't last very long because we ended up having intimacy a few hours later. Now, 4 years later, I feel crazy that I ever felt that way. He's the most handsome man I know. Story 69. I know exactly where you hide the good chocolate, and I've been replacing it piece by piece for 3 years. You think you have incredible self-control, but really I'm just your chocolate dealer, maintaining your supply. Story 70. We agreed early on that marriage wasn't something we wanted. Very serious, very committed relationship, madly in love, just didn't want to do the traditional things like marriage and babies. And now all I want is to marry him and have a baby. But he's firm on it, and I'm afraid if I honestly bring it up, he'll change his mind about being with me or something. I realize this is crazy. I just love him so much I want all of it. I already have children from earlier in life. I just want one with him too. Answer. I knew a couple that had this agreement. After 25 years of living together and having a wonderful life, they were sitting at dinner on vacation. And while having a casual conversation, they came to learn they both wanted to get married, but were afraid to tell each other. So they eloped. On the beach at the hotel in Hawaii they were staying in. Together 45 years now, 20 as happily married. Story 71. I just moved in with my fiancé and am so depressed. He spends so much time alone, reading work. I'm so lonely. I've mentioned it to him, but he says he's not an emotional person. But he wondered where our intimacy went. I've shared I need emotional connection and support, but he truly does not understand. Answer. I feel this so hard. His days off, he literally spends shut in a different room, reading or inventing things to work on. I see him for an hour around dinner time, and then at night he'll read in another room, or occasionally in bed, until he wants to take a break physical intimacy, which I hardly feel up to by now. If I try to talk to him, it's always clear I'm an unwanted interruption to his quest to constantly better himself. A dead house feels lonelier than actually just being alone. Story 72. On our first anniversary, I accidentally covered our bathroom in soot when he left the house. We just started living together, and he was so excited to celebrate it as a perfect day. And he left the house to go to the supermarket, and I was doing my sleepy morning shoot, still wearing my bathrobe. And I didn't pay attention, and I sat on my bathrobe and I shat on the whole thing. I threw it off in a panic, which caused the whole bathroom to be covered in soot. I quickly cleaned it and put everything in the washing machine. The thing I feel most guilty about, we just had a conversation about equally dividing household tasks. And later he said, "Why did you do the laundry out of the blue? You don't need to do everything alone. I could help." And I was like, no, it just needed to be done. I know you would have done it too. Maybe I'll tell him about this on our 10th anniversary. Story 73. Well, I had a secret going for about 13 years from my now wife. I was hiding the fact that I did blow from her. Towards the end of that run, it got bad, only sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night and having to drink myself to sleep. I started to lose my mind. The only thing that made me come clean and get clean is she left with the kids. So I told her everything and went to rehab. Story 74. That I dislike Cadbury's cream eggs. Apparently, I said I liked them on our first date, and for the last 15 years, he has brought one home for me on a Friday, along with flowers, a scratch card. Can't stand the things, but as I never let on in the early years, it feels weird to own up now. Story 75. I once, totally on accident, stumbled upon a big secret of his. How his first real love tragically died when they were both very young. He's over it apparently, and I don't think he'll ever tell me. And he'll never tell him that I know. It's not my place. Story 76. I don't really wish I could tell her, because there'd be no reason at this point. But she's honestly the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I'm 99% sure I would have had a better life if we never got involved. She's basically a mass of complexes and weaknesses, and the only thing I can ever count on her for is to create new problems and expect me to fix them. She hasn't had a job in 10 years, and we're barely scraping by, but there's always some excuse why she can't do anything to help. But fudge, we're in our 40s, and almost 20 years into a marriage, and we have kids, so I don't really see this going any other way besides limping it across the finish line. We don't dislike each other or anything. There's still a lot of affection between us, honestly. I saw the way she grew up, and I understand why she is the way she is. And all her issues were there and on the table before we got married. So I signed up for them. But if I could talk to my teenage self, I would tell him it's a mistake and to stay as far away as possible. But that's the way life goes, right? We make bad decisions as young people, and sometimes those follow you for the rest of your days. Story 77. I was molested by my brother during childhood, and my parents acted like it never happened. He's still in my life and no one knows about it. It's never been spoken about, and he acts like it never happened. We'll go back and forth from being friends sometimes, and then icing each other out for months on end. It eliminates me, and I don't know how to get away. Story 78. The goddamn KFC secret recipe. It's the heaviest burden of my life, knowing all the perfect blend of salts and spices and the joy they would bring to the world if released, truly bringing the world together with their perfection. But as she's a vegan, informing her would mean their demise. Darn you, Colonel Sanders. Darn you to hell for entrusting me with such sacrosanct secrets upon your passing bed. It shall forever be my cross to bear. I shall endure your Kentucky Fried darkness for eternity. Story 79. That my husband's sister got an abortion when she was in a bad marriage. She told me that I was the only one she ever told. She specifically asked me not to tell her brother because she thought it would devastate him. She died at a fairly young age, and even though she had passed, I kept her secret. My husband has also passed, and I never told him, or anyone for that matter. It wasn't my secret to tell. Story 80. He's not good at intimacy. Absolutely no motion in the ocean. But he puts in effort, so I just concentrate really hard and use my hand. Story 81. That I think my husband can't sing this whole time I've been telling him. He's been getting better and better over time, and that he's pretty good now. Nope, can't keep a tune to save his life. Story 82. I thought this thread was going to be filled with people not wanting to tell their spouses about their affairs, but I am genuinely happy to see it's filled with cute shoot. My faith in humanity is getting restored. Can the rest of the internet be like this? Story 83. I put everything in the dishwasher when she is gone. And I mean everything. Steak knives, Tupperware, you name it. Set it all in the drying racks before she gets home and take credit for doing the dishes. Story 84. That few of his friends flirted with me or tried to have a relationship when we were broken up. We broke up for 2 years at the beginning of our relationship. Now we are married for 10 years, and he is still friends with them. Never told him, and I pretend that it never happened when I meet those friends. Story 85. I had just fractured my ankle right before our first date, bowling. I only had a half cast on from the ER because I'd not been to the orthopedic specialist yet. So instead of bailing or switching to something I could manage, I just agreed to go on the date. I took off my cast splint. It was incredibly painful, but 23 years, 3 kids later, here we are. Story 86. That the vet bungled her beloved cat's euthanasia, making the experience terrifying for him. My wife was too upset to be there. I will never forget how awful it was. Story 87. I already know what you think I don't know, and it's fine. I have the same kind of secret. This isn't about intimacy or infidelity. Story 88. Don't have a spouse yet, but whenever I do, I would never tell him my kinky stories that I fulfilled before getting married. It would mess up my marriage for sure. Story 89. He knows I don't like his family because they have made him the black sheep, but they ask for money. But he doesn't know that I dislike them because when he was in a bad accident with an 18-wheeler, nobody cared to even ask if he was okay. And his brother made me beg to borrow his vehicle to go pick him up and make sure he was okay. At the time, he and I were broken up. My friend and her fiancé at the time offered to take me and asked if he was okay and how bad his injuries were and all that. But they had their kids, and I had our girl. Plus, I did not know if I had to bring him and his employees home right away, so I told them to wait and see as his brother would lend me the SUV. His brother was more concerned with who my friend's fiancé was and when he was doing there with me, not even noticing he was driving his truck and I was getting out of my friend's car. So yeah, I dislike his family with a passion, but I will never tell him that. I will just let him think it's me just disliking them. Story 90. That I cannot, for the life of me, believe that he loves me. I have lived a depraved life, intimacy clubs, orgies, went full ham with my bisexuality, and he has had a far more tame existence, either by choice or circumstance. He has an inkling of what I've indulged in prior to meeting him, but I fear if I ever gave him the broader strokes or even a full-on play-by-play of my prior indiscretions, that he'd be disgusted with me. He's the sweetest, kindest man ever, and in my heart of hearts, I know he wouldn't shun me for the life I led prior to meeting him. But he doesn't share the same depth of intimacy, freedom I do, and I always worry that if he found out, or if I simply shared it all with him, that he'd turn tail and run for the hills. It's probably my own guilt, but whatever. It was great while it lasted. He's worth 1,000 lifetimes of that existence, though. I know I made the right choice. Story 91. I let her win at Mario Kart. She gets so excited and happy when she beats me, and genuinely upset when she doesn't, so I almost always let her win. Every once in a while, I luck out so it seems less obvious. She still hasn't caught on. Story 92. When I first agreed to start dating her, I wasn't in love with her. I didn't see her that way. Genuinely, I grew to love her. I was curious about her. I fell in love with who she became as she opened up to me and showed me her genuine self. I love the side of her that she only shows me. I wish she felt more free to be her genuine self. Story 93. My family all died before 71. Dementia, cancer, or tragic end, and I worry what will happen to my mind most of all. I don't have parents, aunts, uncles, or grandparents alive, so no need to tell how they left this earth. Story 94. I dislike her whole family. They abuse her good nature too much. Her mom got a diagnosis of terminal cancer 3 years ago, and it only served for her to try and parasite even more of my wife until she passed last year. All horrible people. Every day I don't have to deal with any of them is a happy day for me. Story 95. His sister got in trouble at work for putting racist posts and links to far-right groups on Facebook alongside advertisements for her employers. She was reported and ended up with an official warning over it. Yes, it was me that reported her, and I don't regret reporting the ignorant racist for 1 minute. Story 96. You know those front bumper scratches on your car? It was me. We were stopped on the interstate and I started dozing off. My foot slipped off of the brake and grazed the trailer in front. Story 97. Shortly after we got married, I confessed a secret to her. I was addicted to pay-to-play cell phone games, namely Star Wars ones, and had racked up several thousands of dollars of credit card debt on essentially nothing. In my wife's endearingly blunt manner, I believe she told me, well, cut it the fudge out, but also told me that my debt is our debt now, and we'd pay it off and move on. Once I told her, I found that it was much easier to quit. I just didn't want to disappoint her. Love set me right. But I totally understand why she gets extra annoyed at me whenever I'm a little too engrossed in my phone. Story 98. While my wife and I were separated a few years ago, we weren't married yet, just dating. I was in a fug-would-be with a girl I met off Tinder. One day, my fug-would-be asked if I would be interested in having intimacy with her friend because her friend developed interest after my fug-would-be kept talking about me. At the time, I thought that sounded great and I agreed. I went over to her friend's apartment that night and found her a bit off-putting. It was in the middle of foreplay where I decided I didn't want to do this anymore, and I proceeded to tell the friend that I didn't want to have intimacy anymore. She pushed me down and said no. She then proceeded to hold me down while she violated me. I tried to fight back, but I didn't want to do so in a way that would hurt her, because if she called the cops, I'm sure that they would have taken her side, and I would have been arrested for assault, even though I was the victim. The cops out here are also pretty racist, and with me being Native American, I'm sure they wouldn't even try to hear my side of the story. If I was arrested, I would have lost my job, so I eventually just took it. After she was done, I got up, got dressed, and left the apartment feeling disgusted with myself. She didn't even say anything while I was leaving. Anyway, I told my Fudwood about what happened, and she ended up ghosting me. I told some of my friends about what happened, and I mostly got laughs and comments like, "You should have enjoyed it. She was hot." Needless to say, I'm not friends with those people anymore. The experience has left me feeling a bit scared of women when I'm alone with them, except for my wife. I struggle in telling her about the experience because she gets upset when she hears about the intimacy I had while we were separated. More than likely, I'll be taking this to my grave with me. Sorry if this story upsets anyone. Story 99. I had slept with his boss about a month before we met. His boss was a longtime friend, and it just happened one night, one time. After we finished and got fully clothed, we talked for a while, and he suggested I go on a date with one of his guys. He said all these great things about him. He's a great guy, listed our common interests, positive traits, and how we would get along so well. Well, we ended up meeting shortly after and married a few years later. My husband is a great guy, by the way. My friend is no longer his boss, but they still work at the same company. We are all friends and even do things together sometimes as a double date or attend each other's family gatherings. Nothing has happened between him and I since, and it won't, as we are both now happily married. No one knows or will ever know. It was literally a one-time fluke. Thinking back on it is kind of weird, actually. But there you have it, Reddit. Story 100. That his disability is making me resentful of him, and the fact that he can't work, and it's my burden to support us, makes me look down on him. He's my best friend, and I dislike him for something that's not his fault. Story 101. I'm not that interested in visiting their country of origin. Not to say I wouldn't go or dislike the culture, but it's not somewhere I'd consider visiting if I weren't married to them. I like my partner for the person they are, but I'm never going to be a breathless tourist wowed by where they're from. Story 102. That my wife's passed down family quiche recipe isn't amazing. It's like a custard, and I loathe every time I see her making it. Story 103. That I started dating her before I had truly finished with the girl before her. For full context, we were never official, and I had ended it as a romantic relationship about a month before, but we had stayed and done stuff together as friends. After about 2 weeks of this, she asked to try again, and I reluctantly agreed as she was a really great person, so I assumed my feelings would probably grow. During this time, I met my partner in a nightclub while I was DJing. I got her number, we started chatting and went on a date. Actual fireworks. I knew I had met the one. After the second date the following weekend, I ended it with the other girl properly a few days later. We are now together 8 years and have 2 kids. I'll take that info to my grave, though. Story 104. I saw my, now, husband slip the note about our order to the waitress on our first date 21 years ago. I was 15, he was 16, and he spent 2 weeks learning about my favorite foods and restaurant orders just to make our first Valentine's Day dinner perfect. He thought he hit it well with his little spin move, but he had been fidgeting with his jacket the whole drive over, so I knew something was up. I have been telling my side of the story, omitting this detail for our whole relationship. Story 105. When we met, I was a high-functioning meth addict. I have a corporate job. She had no idea, etc. Being with her made me want to change, and I slowly weaned off it in the first 3 to 4 months of us dating. I still crave it to this day. Story 106. My husband works very hard and is a really great husband and father. But his emotionally distant family kind of raised him to have a lot of difficulty expressing emotions and connecting in that level. We have 3 neurodivergent kids, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, which makes our family dynamics very overwhelming, sometimes for both of us in different ways. Once, my middle child's therapist said that our kid transferred the father-son relationship and emotions to my dad. That helps out a lot with our kids, because they don't really have established emotional connection, and that my kid speaks of his father in the same manner that a kid would speak about a dead parent. I could never find the courage to tell him about it, because I know he's doing the best he can. Story 107. Not spouse, but sister. I took a 23andMe and found out my dad was not my father. Long story short, probably not hers either, but he asked me not to tell. It's his secret, and I'm keeping it at least until he dies. Story 108. My wife used to fart when she was nervous. She had all sorts of wonderful little idiosyncrasies. She used to fart in her sleep. I thought I'd share that with you. One night it was so loud it woke the dog up. She woke up and went, "Ah, was that you?" And I didn't have the heart to tell her. But Will, she's been dead for 2 years, and that's the stuff I remember. Wonderful stuff, you know? Little things like that. Those are the things I miss the most. The little idiosyncrasies that only I know about. That's what made her my wife. Oh, she had the goods on me too. She knew all my little peccadillos. People call these things imperfections, but they're not. That's the good stuff. Story 109. I slept with a cousin. It's like my dad's distant cousin's son. We met in adulthood and I had no idea. Obviously just happened once. I think they're my second cousin. Anyways, husband and I have talked about our past hookups, but that's someone I'm taking to the grave. Haven't seen that cousin in years and don't think we would run into each other again, but still feels weird. Story 110. Who intimacy abused me as a child. They are still living, and I don't want my husband to go to jail for takedown. Story 111. I'd never voice it to her, but I question every day if I'm doing her a disservice by dating her. I'm a widow, and I love my current partner with all my heart. I just know all my heart isn't quite what it used to be. It's not as much love to give out as I used to have. I always wonder if I am holding her back. If by dating her, I'm keeping her away from the person who can love her as much as I used to love in general. Story 112. The engagement ring I gave her was bought for someone else about 4 years before. It even has an engraving that is not so easily explained. Her fingers swell a lot, so she has never actually worn it, nor wedding ring for that matter. If she ever notices the engraving, I already have planned how I'm going to pretend to be angry about the engraving being mistaken and what it should have been, and that the place I got it from was in a now-closed department store. We have been married for 8 years. Answer: that's awful. Why didn't you sell it and get her one for her? That's really sad for her, that you've just given her something that you bought with someone else in mind. My partner tried to say we should do the wedding plan he'd made with his ex-fiancée, and that hurts enough and dampens wedding stuff completely. The ring being bought for someone else? That would be devastating. How would you feel if she gave you a ring intended for her ex, especially for something as huge of a milestone and as special as a wedding? I'd rather a 20 ring than a ring someone bought for someone else. Story 113. I used to do substances in my teenage years, but I stopped cold turkey when I moved to get away from it. I never stopped thinking about substances. I love how they make me feel, not feel. I know I can never do them again because I have zero self-control. It's my one hard line. No substances near me or we are over. And I've always told him it's because I dislike substances and addicts. 14 fudge years and they still take up so much mental space. I don't want him to know how weak I really am. Story 114. This is not my secret, but my sister-in-law's. She already has 2 kids and her husband said, no more. He was adamant about not having any more. Well, she wanted one more, so she told her husband that she got an IUD, but did not. Yes, she got pregnant, and he still thinks somehow he was able to get one past the goalie. She played it off as him having some sort of super sperm. Answer: what your SIL did is deeply fudge up and not okay. I'm not trying to diminish that at all. However, just pointing out if her husband is adamant he didn't want more kids, he absolutely could have and still can get a vasectomy. It's a 1-hour outpatient procedure that ensures he would never have to worry about pregnancy again. I'm not trying to victim shame. I'm just pointing out men and women are equally responsible for getting birth control. Story 115. I had a weekend-long fling with her sister 6 months before we met. I saw the family photos a few months after I met her, and it works because her sister and I are rarely in the same time zone, let alone the same room. Story 116. That his mother drives me nuts. I can't stand visiting and listening to her gossip about everyone. Then repeats herself constantly, so I hear the same stories a few times that day. Also, she's hard of hearing but refuses to get hearing aids. It makes me insane because she pretends to hear then lies about it. Gossip lies. My 2 biggest pet peeves. Story 117. I did forget to take her parents' bins out, so I literally went and shoveled it into garbage bags and took it to the dump. Story 118. I can't stand his dad. His mother is such a lovely person, and I love being around her. His dad is hard fudge work. Story 119. I was molested by my father and my uncle, and it sometimes affects the intimacy between me and my partner, but I could never tell him because I don't want it to change how he views me. Story 120. That his mom's cooking isn't that great. And yep, never telling him or anyone in his family or my family. They're a bunch of blabbermouths. Story 121. Usually, I'd have nothing to contribute to threads like these because my ADHD won't let me hide any secrets from my husband. That said, I recently got into writing fan fiction, and he doesn't know my fanfic username. I refuse to share it with him because I want my likes to be organic. He only wants to know so he can like it in support. I simply have no interest in him reading the shoot smut I write. LMAO. Story 122. 13 years later, and I'm still miffed that we never went on any kind of honeymoon. I tried planning things, asking when and where he'd like to go, even pulled out my credit card to try and spontaneously book something. Life always came up, so it still hasn't happened. I was going to try and plan something special for our 15-year anniversary, but now we're looking at an international move next year. Maybe it's time to realize it's just never going to happen. Story 123. Part of the reason I don't want to have kids is because I don't think she's capable of dividing her attention enough. She often will spend more time with her pets than me, even when I'm there, and it makes me upset. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vancher. See you soon.